Some of the conservatives realized afterwards, yeah, we might have been a little off in our projections. But look, to their credit, they have now gone on television and admitted it. Watch.
Well, I'm going to say bluntly, we were wrong. I think Karl Rove, Michael Barone, Dick Morris, a whole group of us, frankly, misunderstood what was happening in the country.
This was mostly a tactical election. They had a very good ground game, and they played defensive ball the entire time.
I plead guilty. I goofed. I made a mistake. I undercounted the minority turnout and women and young people.
And old people and middle-aged people and the Chinese. And did anybody realize there were Pakistanis in the country? Yes, you have massively undercounted. But look, I really do want to give them credit for actually coming out and saying we were wrong. That's big of them. And there's guys like Joe Scarborough who have, of course, never admitted that they were wrong. They're just going on and say, anybody who thinks they're going to know what's going on in this election, they're idealized, they're ridiculous. Well, we were telling you all along. For example, I didn't believe Gallup, right? Now, Gallup's a very legitimate polling organization. They're not slanted in either way. So why didn't I believe Gallup? Is it because I didn't want to believe? No. It's because they were outliers. It was clear. There would be 12 polls in one direction, and then Gallup would be in a completely different direction, only with Rasmussen. Rasmussen is conservative, and they calculated in a certain way, and they were off, right? And I said, that's why those two polls are wrong, and the rest of all the polls, there's like about 29 polls or so, are the ones that are correct, right? So here's what's interesting. Fordham University, after the election, did a study of which polls were the most wrong, which were the most accurate. And it turns out, in fact, Rasmussen and Gallup were in the bottom 5. But they weren't alone, by the way. Now, let's be fair. NPR finished at near the bottom, and then AP was at the very bottom. And so these guys got it all wrong. Now, the other 23 polls did better, obviously, by definition. But there were some outliers, as happens all the time. But of course, the conservatives wanted to believe Rasmussen. They wanted to believe Gallup, so they ignored the other 23 polls. But here's the interesting part. You want to know who tied for #1 in most accurate public policy polling, which every single article labeled as, oh, the liberal-leaning public policy polling. I wouldn't trust their numbers. Oops. But I love #2. You see that? Daily Kos, SEIU, and then PPP again. Daily Kos, the ones that they commissioned, tied for #1. Daily Kos is a liberal bloc, okay? So, of course, the rest of the press is like, oh, ideologues, no way, get out of here. No, but you were wrong. They were right. And the reason that I had good faith in them is not because I think, oh, Daily Kos will definitely get it right or public policy polling will get it right. No, it's because they were grouped in there with the rest of the polls that said the same thing, except for the outliers. It's common sense. Now, another guy I want to give credit to is a guy by the name of Dean Chambers. Now, who is he? He's an interesting guy. He did unskewed polling. Okay, so he had this theory, all these polls are skewed in favor of Democrats. In fact, self-identified Democrats outnumbered self-identified Republicans by 6%. So he said, aha, it's off. Now, why is it off? That's what the numbers indicate. He thought, no, there's no way. Of course, there's more Republicans than Democrats in the country. Now, there was no basis for that, right? But that's the conservative worldview. There are more Republicans. There are more conservatives. I know it. I know it. We're a center-right country. We're a center-right country. So what did he do? He changed the numbers and pretended as if there was the same number of Republicans and Democrats. You know what happened? Dead wrong. But to his credit, he came out and said, quote, Nate Silver was right and I was wrong. Now, look, I love that he went out of his way to say that. And it goes further. He said his website, the unskewed polling, he's going to shut it down. He says it just turned out it wasn't true. So why would I continue it? It's a brand new day among conservatives. You don't see that very often. Okay, good for you. I appreciate that, Dean Chambers. And I think actually you gained a lot more credibility doing that. So there are all the Republicans for maybe the first time in the last, 15 years at least, coming out and saying, our bad, our mistake, we blew it. Of course, except for Joe Scarborough, who's still railing about, people who do math, they're a joke. Okay, you can tell I'm still a little, I'm not bitter at Joe Scarborough. I'm not mad at you, Joe. I'm more amused than anything else.